How did you know that this is what you wanted to do?
This is where I can probably talk my history, and it should give people a level of calmness because I am the poster child for not knowing what I wanted to do. So generally speaking, I did everything under the sun, really did. And I was a late bloomer for education, everything. So I was an organic farmer, I was a welder, and I loved everything I've done. I went to school primarily when I was 21, 18 through 21 for computer networking, doing system level administrative stuff. Very boring. I never really used that degree. And then I'd say about 10 years ago from my career and then moving into welding and building large, I started building sawmill equipment. I was in that position building to print, and I really got into the engineering aspect of it.
The JobGuppy podcast is on a mission to help career explorers and job seekers find out from real people what a specific career or job is really like on a day-to-day basis. Join me, your host, Chris Hodges, as we dive in and explore jobs with each guest. You'll hear from experienced working professionals with transparent, realistic, and job-specific insight about their daily roles and their career journey. We go on to explore other topics like job search recommendations and income and salaries. You'll hear answers to questions like, do I need to go to college for this job? How much college? What is your work-life balance like? What do you like or dislike, or what would you do different? And if you don't like what you hear about one job role, we discuss alternative job titles to explore related to the same industry. And my favorite part is the end where the guest shares their inspirational insight and recommendations for the next person wanting to get started on their career journey. Today we are meeting with Ben Pratt. He is a market development manager working for Carlisle Interconnect. He has been an organic farmer, welder, applications engineer, sales engineer, now market development manager. Ben's career path should bring great peace of mind to anyone thinking that they have to have it all figured out at 18. Bonus message, he has no regrets. Ben shares information about his current role as a market development manager and how he navigated into this career. He shares his likes and dislikes as well, and spoiler alert, this is a career field where you may pitch some of your best ideas only to be told no. Ben shares his guidance on how even though this role may not require a 4-year degree at some companies, having a degree will help navigate into the role sooner rather than working your way into it through many years of experience. And that's not to say you can go into this role directly from college. Some level of experience will be needed to hone your knowledge for the purpose of applying it to product and marketing development, like learning how sales work and understanding your target industry. A master's degree may speed up moving into a market development role, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an MBA degree. This is a highly personal role where mastering interactions with people across diverse disciplines, both in and outside of your company, will help maximize your career opportunities. I hope you enjoy listening to this JobGuppy interview with Ben and learning more about the role of a market development manager at Carlisle Interconnect.
My name is Ben Pratt, as Chris said, market development manager for Carlisle Interconnect. Carlisle Interconnect works in a number of industries, providing cableized and interconnect solutions. So anywhere from aerospace and defense to space applications. What I concentrate primarily in is semiconductor test and measurement. I'm basically helping people who are testing silicon and semiconductors, getting their signals from board to test equipment for IC development, IC production, and release to go-to-market strategies for them. As a market development manager, it's a little bit of it's not a common role. You don't hear it out there too much. Really what I do is kind of draw upon I'll call them 3 branches, right? I think one would be product management. One would be a strategic account manager, and then product marketing. So I'm kind of sit in this crux of 3 spots where I'm basically looking at the market as a whole. In my case, test and measurement of semiconductor, and understanding strategic ways and accounts to go after. Looking at the best way to market and go-to-market strategy for our products, and then also have say in the products being developed.
So what I would like to do now is take some of those, and if you were to, the way I like to put it is kind of walk me through how some of that manifests itself in your daily role. What did you do this week, last week? What does this job entail? You say engineering, you say semiconductor, product development, I hear marketing, I hear sales, I hear forecasting, I hear number crunching, I hear accounting, I hear finance, I hear technical semiconductor stuff. If you could help me maybe drill into those little categories.
I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It sounds like somebody who's wearing multiple hats, and that's really what it is, especially with this role and how it was defined. If I look back on like a normal week of activity, there is stuff that I do. I take care of major accounts, meaning I'm an account manager in some aspects. It's a minimal part of my position, but it's part of it. So there's major accounts that I work with where it's client relations, understanding applications, and being a technical sales manager. That's where some of my history is from. And I would say that takes up a percentage of my day, maybe 10, 15%. The other side of it, when I talk about market development, I highly look at different segments of the market that I think would be profitable for our company or that would bring revenue. And so specifically, lately looking at what we call automated test equipment solutions for semiconductors. I'm just using that as an example. There's different interconnects that go into those systems, and we're not playing in there now. So I'm looking at it from a perspective of us as a product management team. How can we develop products for that? And so what does that entail, right? I identify a market and I say, this is good. So last week, I probably spent a major portion of the second half of my week working on product descriptions that would work in that market. Then assigning what effort it would take for us to develop those products and what kind of rate of return we would get. So I kind of build a spreadsheet that covers all that. And I start to map out revenue. What do I think predicted revenue is for 3 years? Once I can add all those numbers up, then I sit down with product management. I sit down with some of the sales team, try to get some voice of the customer, try to understand from product management if my perceived difficulties of developing those products is accurate. Sitting with the sales team and understanding, is this what I'm perceiving as revenue accurate? Once that happens, which basically that's what I did all last week. I had a couple of meetings at the end of the week, showed those spreadsheets to the people that be, and that's what I'll work on this week is kind of finalizing. Another thing I worked on last week that kind of goes in line with this, we have existing products that we're trying to re-release. I don't think many people know about us. We have some really good stuff out there. It's products that have been developed over a long period of time. They're ruggedized, good connections for electrical signal path transmission, which is obviously the industry I'm in. And so we're looking at it from a perspective of how do we release these products in a manner that's ready to go to market. It's about how do I build a platform that's go to market for my sales. So how do we release a product so that a sales team member can go into these accounts that part of my job too is to designate those accounts that are going to be a good fit. How are they going to go in there and be successful? And that can be everything from having samples, evaluation kits, stuff for people to look at. It could be cohesive technical slide deck that they can look at and present. It can even be, gets into the minutia, the kind of the technical sales aspect of where I come from. What are going to be the common questions, graphs, specs that are going to be asked of them and that I need to have ready for them in their holster so that they can continue the sales process? That's kind of in a nutshell what I can consider I do on a daily basis. It's very much always moving around.
You mentioned one thing. You said you're working on this and you're moving stuff out for the sales team. You're kind of out in front of them, laying the groundwork. Are you doing a lot of this by yourself, or is it common for someone in your role to do work on a lot of this by themselves, or are you leading it, but you have a direct team of people with you that's helping put some stuff together?
Yeah, it's a little of both. Best way to describe it, market development managers take on verticals, and I said that kind of at the top. So there's a product manager that is director of all the products that we do. He spearhead a lot of the product development and understanding of that. My job really in a lot of ways, it's many things, but you can look at it. I'm looking at the guy between the customer and him to make sure that, we're taking the voice of the customer and thinking about the future. But he has an engineering team that he works with, head of engineering. So when it comes to a team, to answer your question, there's me, my product manager, and my head of engineering. And the three of us are very tight. A lot of what we do is constant communication and understanding what's going on. On the sales side of it, kind of on the flip side of that coin, we have a sales team that I work with. You have to understand what they're trying to test, how important their performance is, what kind of signals they're transmitting. So when it comes down to that portion of it, yes, I have a sales team that I work with heavily.
And you cover multiple industries, and that means you have to be a little technically well-rounded too to be able to pull in information that you need to put these requirements together and help, right?
Right. And the thing that you always have to think about is, I cover a certain vertical. And then there's these other verticals, defense space, aerospace, but we all want to cross sell and cross integrate. We want to be in the, how do I best say this? We want to be in the business of capabilities. We want to solve a problem. And those problems could be the same if you're building an airplane or you're building a test chip or a processor, right? It could be you don't have enough space on your PCB. It could be your performance needs to be clean out to a certain level. So we want to be able to talk the language of solving capabilities and problems, no matter what industry we touch on.
And your role is sitting in the middle of all of this.
I guess if I put it in 3 steps, is identify the markets and the revenue we should be chasing. What's emerging, what's new, what's awesome. Working with product management to develop the products if we don't already have them to go in there, or to remarket the capabilities we have, and then producing the collateral, the training, the spec sheets, data sheets, and everything we need for the sales team to go into the customer. And then I'd say the last thing on that is identifying the top customers to knock on doors.
Are you always in the office? And what I mean by in the office, I mean versus traveling to sites to be in front of customers, or, if you're, I don't mean like work from home type office. I just, wherever your office is, if you're not there, but you're always on the road in a car, rental cars, hotels.
It ebbs and flows. So in the beginning, I was traveling a lot. I wanted to go see the different sites internally, go see some factories, see how products were made. I do go in front of customers quite often. Right now, I'm kind of like in this where it ebbs and flows, is kind of like it flows. I go see customers. Right now, I'm sitting back being like, okay, how do I make things better for myself and others to go out in front of customers? So I'm getting things prepared and stuff of that sort. And then I'll go out on the road, probably heavily beginning of next year, to kind of go show people what we have after I work with a team to create that. I keep saying collateral that makes us it easier to sell.
So it sounds like this would be a role where travel would most likely be expected. And even if it wasn't, it's probably going to behoove you to travel. It's just going to help you be face to face with people.
Yeah, and it is a big, right? It's a big customer relationship thing, because I need to feed off the voice of the customer and understand what they're doing and the problems they're seeing. And the only way to really get a grip on that is to go out and talk to the customers and be in their environments and seeing their problems, right? And rolling up your sleeves a little bit. So yeah, I would say for your listeners out there, for sure, it's a traveling. I would say that if it was on a job description, I would guarantee you would probably say 50% or more. Traveling wise.
That's actually a great way to sum it up there. Meeting time, would you say you kind of have a 50-50 split of you solo by yourself doing stuff in front of your computer versus being on the phone with other people, soliciting, just working through things? Or is it more like 90-10?
That's a great question. I would say if you averaged it out, it's probably 40% meetings, 60% alone time. I'm a big advocate, I guess on a personal thing that I do. I block time off to work on things. And I think if anyone is planning on getting into a little bit of a corporate career out there and thinking about positions like this, especially something like I do, or anything that's going to ask this kind of organization from you, it behooves you to sit down and schedule your day out and say, all right, these 2 hours I'm going to work on building a spreadsheet of revenue for the next 3 years, stuff of that sort. We can all get trapped in our email, and then you can get trapped on Teams calls, talking things out and having, your hallway conversations versus Teams. Because I'm fully remote, so there is that. And I'm not downplaying that at all. I just say that I think it's an important factor of anyone doing any of this, is to schedule the time to get the stuff you need done. For me personally, it's about a 40-60 doing what I need to do.
I think you've covered everything pretty well. I feel like you have. It'll be up to the listener to decide, but I think you've given some good insights into what you do, the kind of work you do, some of the industries you touch. So how did you know that this is something you wanted? I guess how can we put this? Because this is something you're doing, like a role you're in now. Is this a role that you've been kind of in a roundabout way working through in most of your career, or have you spanned very distinct career fields to get to where you are? So, like if somebody was in college, would they be able to go straight to this role, or would they have to kind of maneuver their way into it? How did you know that this is what you wanted to do?
I thought about this one because I knew this one was going to be a question. This is a good one. Because honestly, let's be honest. Did I think I wanted to be a market development manager for Carlisle Interconnect in the test and measurement market? Absolutely not. Did I set out to do that? No. And this is what's great about this podcast, right? Is you're talking to young folks and giving them an idea of what is out there and how maybe they can get there. But like, this is where I can probably talk my history, and it should give people a level of calmness because I am the poster child for not knowing what I wanted to do. I'll give a little history, and that's the best way I can describe it. And it's funny because I thought about this on yesterday because I knew this would be one of those questions. So generally speaking, I did everything under the sun, really did. And I was a late bloomer for education, everything. So I was an organic farmer, I was a welder, and I'm talking not that long ago. Maybe I think I stopped welding maybe 8 years ago. Before that, I was a manager of an organic vegetable farm, and I loved everything I've done. And then there was a point where I was fixing everything on the farm, and I was welding a bunch. So yeah, organic farmer, welder, many different things. I went to school primarily when I was 21, 18 through 21 for computer networking, doing system level administrative stuff. Very boring. I quickly found when I got out of school, when I looked around, that was not for me. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. It was not the people I wanted to spend my time with. I was just a different beast. I was a little bit more outgoing. I never really used that degree. That's when I went in and did a bunch of things. That's where I called this big deviant curve, right? And then I'd say about 10 years ago from my career and then moving into welding and building large, I started building sawmill equipment, large scale sawmill equipment. Totally opposite of what I do now. I was in that position building to print, and I really got into the engineering aspect of it. I really enjoyed building things, having the satisfaction of that. And I was looking at prints every day, engineering prints, I mean, and building sub-assemblies and welding them to large scale things. And so then I said, you know what? I kind of enjoy this. I'd like to be a mechanical engineer. I can do that. The first time I really was like, hey, okay, I kind of understand what I want to do. So I went into a program for mechanical engineering, started with an associate's. I did that for 2 years while I was working the entire time. And in that time, I ended up moving and starting a new position at a different company. So I went from sawmill equipment in a hangar to a small time company that built, the best way to describe it is very high speed signal cable solutions for test of silicon. So that now we're starting to see where the career path's coming in, right? So I finished that degree, and as soon as I finished it, it was a great company to work for. The owner loved me. He just thought I had great work ethic, kind of moved me into what we call an applications engineering role, where I was looking at and supporting the sales team. So basically, I was supposed to be the application pro technical liaison to work with the sales team and engineering to get things accomplished. And I loved that role. That was a great role. And that led very quickly, maybe 2 years in that role, to a sales role. So then once I got into the sales role, it was just different, right? So now I was a technical sales manager. So I was a little bit of application engineer. So I had to know everything, but then I'm also learning the sales process. And that's a whole beast in itself. Everyone thinks sales is easy. It's not. It's probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. And then a couple years into that, I started really enjoying the business aspect of it. So I went back to school again, and I got my MBA, and I finished that 1 year ago. And around that time, I was finishing up about 5 years in sales and applications, technical sales. And then I came upon this role now. And really, it was a extension of what I was doing in school, which, it was, I guess where I want to pause here and say is, for a guy who had no idea what he wanted to do in school and then found his way back into school, I'm now using a lot of that for this role, and that MBA specifically, like strategic decision making, looking at internal, external analysis of markets, SWOT analysis, which is a big business term, which talks about strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, where you're kind of putting everything into a bucket and understanding what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and then making a strategic mapping or plan off of all this research to say, this is how we should attack a market. So that's what I really learned when I was doing my MBA. And then this role is really an extension of that. This is what they asked me to do. They brought me on to do this. The long answer there is, did I know I want to do this? Absolutely not. Was it organic process to get here? Absolutely. I'm excited that I've been given the opportunity. I think it was a lot of luck and a little bit of work ethic that got me here. But now I'm doing what I want to be doing because I really enjoyed, in that whole time when I was doing application engineering and sales, I really enjoyed having a seat at the table and talking strategy. Like, how are we going to get to the next level? Or what products should we develop? Or what markets are ripe for us to go into? And I did a little bit of that. But this role that I'm in now, it really allows me to have a voice. I have a soapbox of sorts to stand on, and people will listen. And then I have a little bit of a confidence behind me, and just a good team of people to help me get there too. So I'm psyched for what I do now. But like I said, it was a long slog. If you talked to me 10 years ago, I would have been a confused young man.
I would say less than half the people I've talked to so far have had, maybe didn't take as long to get there, but have meandered. Some it was 2 years of college before they kind of redirected. Some it was after they got started, they didn't even finish with a degree and just got into the field. And then after they started working for a while, saw what they wanted to do and saw that this is the degree they needed to go get after they started working. And then they picked it up from there, which is actually a pretty valid way to do it too. I think it's important for people to hear that, because a lot of this is people wondering what are they going to do, or they might feel lost, or they might feel, I don't know where this is going, or I want to do. But like you said, it's not hopeless.
That's a major portion of this. What I've understood and looked at and listened to your interviews is you don't need to know what you need to do at 18. That's something that I thought. I thought that I know I need to know what I'm going to be doing at 20 years old, and I got to be ready to do it. And that was not the case. People need to understand that you're going to figure it out. Sometimes it's better just to work and figure it out, you know?
Is there anything that you think would surprise people to know about your job? For your job, I don't know if that's something people really is widely known, so it's kind of hard to say. There's a bunch of assumptions that just come with it. I'll ask it this way, because me hearing it, so I'm thinking maybe another engineer is hearing this, and I actually know you in a professional capacity from working with you when you were in sales, and I'm in the semiconductor industry. So I hear your role now, and I have an assumption about you have to be highly technically skilled, with a lot of engineering background, like electrical engineering background, to do what you do. But what I'm hearing from talking to you, it's a lot more heavily business based, almost more weighted on the business side of things. You don't need an electrical engineering degree for this.
Yes, I would agree with that statement. I think engineering's taken more of a backseat for sure. It's all numbers. And the technical aspect of it that still comes into play is keeping up with reading and understanding where the market's going. A majority of salespeople aren't the most technical people in the world. A lot are. That's what makes a good salesperson. They need to know a little bit about a lot of things.
You didn't have to come into this field with an electrical engineering degree. So that's another kind of, I guess, to my surprise hearing this. Maybe not the average listener in high school or college, but for an experienced engineer person, I'm surprised you didn't have to have that coming into it.
It comes down to the world of interconnects, right? In the world of interconnects, we're dealing with a lot of mechanical engineering. Sure, there's signal path and electrical engineering involved with that. And if you can make it work, it can work. But there's always a lot of mechanical engineering involved too.
Next question. What about your job do you like, and what do you dislike?
Things I like about the job is the team aspect and being able to drive things that we can sit back and look at and be proud of. You can do that with any job, but we're kind of pushing the meter at the company too. So we're kind of doing things that are pretty major. And I hope that we're going to look back and say, all that was implemented and look what we did. And again, it's going to come down to probably numbers at the end of the day. You have to have measurable metrics to base your progress on. So I do enjoy that part. I'm a big metrics guy. I do like math. So I'm looking forward to my team accomplishing and then us having a measuring stick and then hitting those things. And I do love building those metrics and those spreadsheets to prove things. So I do love that about my job. I love all that spreadsheet writing. Stuff I don't love, I think that any job, I think with any company, you can come in with, you can have the gusto and grand ideas, but sometimes it's, you get told no, and that happens anywhere. So sometimes I can come in with the best plan in the world and say, this is a perfect market we should be going after and we should be doing it. And someone who's making the major decisions, and I don't fault them for it, look at it as a risk assessment. Like I kind of mentioned that a couple of minutes ago. They might look at it and say, that's too much risk at this time. Things are going well, and we have these progressions going. We're going to stay on this path. So sometimes you do a lot of work for nothing. I don't love that, but that's part of it, right? I can't think that I have all the best ideas in the world. And there's other guys in my role too that I work with that are doing it too. And we're all competing for time and resources of the company to go after our market. So sometimes you have to be able to take the no, but I don't love it.
And this interview definitely isn't about, selling your job to people. It's about being transparent, letting them know, like, these are things you're going to have to deal with. So yeah, some of the stuff sounded glamorous. I told you the stuff I like. I'm all, happy, excited. But then there's like there's this side of it too. And your work-life balance, even if you're happy or not happy with it, if you could just maybe expound on what the work-life balance of somebody in this role might be like.
It's a tough question. Like I think everyone's work-life balance is in their own hands, right? So but there is things that make it better. And my advice to anyone who is listening to this would be, my personal opinion is enjoy your team and enjoy your manager, because if you're on the same page, that helps your work-life balance. And I'd say that mine's pretty good now. I mean, there's pressure with my job, of course. When it comes down to is the team is acting, and when one of us wants to take a morning off to get something done outside of work, we're covering for each other. And my manager is totally receptive of understanding that we have a life outside of this, and our weekends are this for ourselves and stuff of that sort. So, but I really, like I said, back to my starting comments, it really comes down to having a good team and a good manager that understands that you're getting your stuff done. Like I like to snowboard and surf and do a lot of things here on the East Coast. And so surf's up tomorrow morning, and I'm going to make sure that I am in the water at 7 o'clock. So I might go to my desk a little late, and that's how I keep my balance. If I didn't have a manager and a team that understood that I will make up those hours and that I'm putting in the time, then it would be difficult. And I've worked with teams like that, so that's a big part of it.
And that's why I asked this question, because that's a big factor. And, I'd say that's a great perk of the job. Kind of your position, it might be related to your company too. Wouldn't say everybody in every position at every company is going to be able to be afforded that. But, that is something to talk about when you're interviewing. Maybe if someone's looking into these kind of jobs and talking through that, maybe ask who you're working with, what the hours, the schedules are like. I kind of like to joke that I don't know what I would do if I had to clock in at 8 o'clock. Pretty much graduated and been in more of a salary, kind of what you describe. I'm in the middle of Texas, so I'm not surfing every weekend or snow skiing. But, the flexibility of getting your job done, if I need to take a 2-hour lunch or something and then come back and get back on the computer at 9 o'clock that night, as long as I'm getting things done. But, that does come with some burden and responsibility, accountability, self-motivation.
Yes.
Don't take advantage of it. It doesn't mean you went surfing and you don't have to make up for that time. But as long as you're keeping it balanced, I agree with you. So that sounds like a pretty good work-life balance to me.
Yeah, and you make a good point, right? Like yesterday was Sunday, and for 3.5 hours I was working on something because I knew I had a meeting this morning. But it's just there's stuff that you do, and I just know being an adult and understanding what's priority to keep things moving and making sure that you're hitting your personal goals or the team's goals. There's definitely there's times where, and my wife says this a lot to me. There's times when you need to get away, and it could be 9 in the morning. Be 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It could be whenever, but you're going to work better if you walk away and do something for you. And that's where that work-life balance is really important. And I find it more in just like physical activity because that clears my head and makes me feel good. But everyone should make sure that if you have that constant anxiety that you have to get stuff done, stuff of that sort, that's where the unhealthy stuff comes in. And just you're working too much.
So do you have any required certifications that you have to maintain like on an ongoing basis? Sounds like you're always learning new stuff from that perspective. You're watching the markets, emerging markets, new growth, but you're not required to go back to school or keep something every 6 months or anything like that for this kind of role.
No, nothing that I have to keep upkeep. I would think that for my position, probably a bachelor's degree is what would be required for an interviewed student. But no, nothing to keep up. I'm sure there's branches of mine that would be like a product management certificate. I'm sure there's stuff like that some people do, but not, I personally don't do it.
Do you need a degree for this job, and what kind of degree, if so?
I'm kind of like, I kind of feel 50-50 on it, right? Like I think you could come up within a system and learn and do it without a degree. I think a degree in many aspects when folks are interviewing is something that is required. And I think more so because it's a standard, but also like people want to know that you sat down and did something 4 years and accomplished it. So I guess I have a hard time with it because I'm like, yeah, you could learn on the job and do this and have 10, 15 years of experience and find yourself in this role, no problem. But going out and applying, you're definitely going to be put in a bucket where you're going to be compared to people with degrees. And a bachelor is going to help you. A master's might put you over the top.
That's a follow-up question is, does it help to continue past a bachelor's? Does a master's help? Does a PhD help? Do they hurt? I talked to one place where they actually didn't like PhDs because they came in and they felt they were untrainable for what that field was. Anything like this in this area?
Yeah, I would say that I think a master's will help you, especially in the role that I do. Like I said earlier, I think it's an extension of what I was doing in that school for strategic decision making. Really looking at what I do now, I can directly relate it to almost my senior thesis in an MBA program. So yeah, and I think it helps. I don't know what the next level here would be, but an MBA is a kind of an important step in understanding that business aspect of it. If you look at the way that I described it, there's a technical aspect, so I could be more technical and understand applications. And then I moved into business once I was in sales for a while because I wanted to understand the business side of it. And now this role, like we talked about, is it's a lot more business, a lot more numbers. So I think the MBA definitely helped me in that aspect prepare for this role.
When you said masters a few seconds ago, would you say specific to a master's of business, an MBA, or just kind of a master's in engineering, master's in anything?
Yeah, I think for this role, you could probably do both. If I was being completely honest, a master's in engineering is going to a lot. I know a lot of really good product managers that have a master's in electrical engineering or mechanical engineering, and there's a lot of product management in what I do. I do work with a product manager, but there's a lot of like looking at it from that perspective. But I would think both would help you.
So if you didn't have your MBA, but you did have a master's, somebody's like already in their second year of their non MBA master's program, and they liked what they heard. That it's like, hey, don't rule this out.
Yeah, no, they'd be fine. The big thing about what I do, and I'll go back to the sales stuff, is to be able to be personable and to build relationships and be able to, talk to customers on a level. I mean, you could have a master's in theater, and if you have that skill, that's a major part of it. And I don't claim to have awesome skills at it, but that's a major part of it. You got to be able to go in and talk and have relationships and learn from the market. Some people are very technical and they want to be in front of a CAD station or doing the technical stuff. That's a portion of it. There's an outgoing personality portion of this. Going back to your question, I don't think it matters what masters you have. I know folks who have masters in electrical engineering that are doing director of global sales now because that's where they started, but they were quickly identified as a leader. A lot of times that's when a leader comes into role, when managerial stuff. But they could talk with people, and that's a major portion of this, right? Is being able to take input and talk to customers all the time.
Now, your role, could you come straight out of college and go into this role, or would it be something you need to kind of work your way into this role from maybe navigate into it?
I think it would be more of a navigation because you need to learn the market first. I'm sure there's data analytic roles that are probably a little bit more in the meat and potatoes of the data analytics side. So data analytics students could come in and look at stuff from that perspective. But learning the sales process and some of the sales stuff that I build and understanding the markets, that's really kind of a culmination of some experience there. But there's definitely stuff you would come in as junior product managers, junior salespeople, applications engineering, like I started.
Let's jump into the job search. Knowing that this might not be something that they get right into from school when they graduate, could you repeat some of those other job titles maybe that they could search for that would be applicable and would help them grow into this kind of job role?
I think applications engineer is the major one. So application engineer is a customer facing engineer role. And that's kind of what shot me into the sales side of this and what I do now. I think that's a big one. That's basically you're doing all the technical besides really building and designing maybe the part in the end of the game. You're basically using all the building blocks and working with the sales team to navigate it and prepare it and give it to the engineering team to finalize. But you're also doing product marketing and really technical marketing. So you're using your engineering degree, but you're also that person that's in front of the customer a lot. So you're going to get a lot of customer facing experience, which is key to the role. And you're also going to get exposure to internal teams that you wouldn't so much, right? A normal engineer might just work with the engineering manager, and that might be their most interaction. On an application engineering side, you're going to work with a sales team. You're going to work with sales directors. You're going to work with the marketing team, the marketing directors. It exposes you to that business tip of the spear, as they say, side of it. And that can kind of get you into this path of getting into more of a market development manager, product manager, sales manager kind of role. So that's what I would aim for if I was a young person listening to this and thought it sounded like something they'd be interested in. applications engineering roles are widely available for folks coming out of school. And it's a great way to use your degree, but also get exposure.
Are there any well-known, I call them golden tickets? So for this particular job role or this particular market or industry, are there any schools that stand out like the top three, like you go here and you just going to get a job, or is it pretty wide open and they're all on a level playing field?
I don't know if I'm the best suited to answer that question. I don't think there is specifically for my role. I think for like electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, obviously there's good schools and better schools, right? There might be Penn State, I think, for electrical engineering. You hear these names, but like when I look at my colleagues and I might look at their LinkedIn from engineer one to engineering manager, and I look at where their degrees are from, that it's across the board. I'm sure a good school is going to get you in a better spot when you're interviewing. But once you get in, I feel truthfully about this. Once you get into the job market and you show your work ethic and you show your value, you're using the tools that you learned, it becomes a level playing field. It always will be something, and it kind of goes back to that question of like, well, does an MBA help you get into this, or does an electrical engineering master's get you into this? You're always, when you interview and go into a position, you're going to be judged against people for education. And that's where I think I had an internal battle when we talked about that earlier. I don't love it, but that's part of it, right? That's kind of how things are. So yes, I think going to a top-notch school is going to help you get into the interviewing process, but you still have to interview well and you still have to show your value when you're there. But like I said, sitting back now and sitting with my colleagues, some folks, did a different path. They did 2 years community college, then went to an electrical engineering or mechanical engineering degree. I don't think once you get into the workforce, it's really on your own merit.
On the income side of things, anything to speak to that you'd like to?
It's a six-figure salary. Like you're making over 100, but you're not much further. It's a bonus structure where you get a base salary and then you get bonusable metrics. So I'm really judged on what I produce and what the company produces, right? So some of my bonuses tied to the company performance, some of the bonuses tied to measurable metrics that we set out at the beginning of the year. And really it's tied to releasing new products or finding new markets to chase, stuff of that sort. And I think that's about par for the course. I think if you looked at like product manager, if you looked like on one of the websites, it would be kind of in that range from senior to new, right? You would find the same pay scale. I don't think it's a job that's going to get you into the multiple hundreds of thousands. I think there's different levels of next progression in career that you might have to go down.
So the next part would be getting into some advice. We'll bridge over from the job search, any advice on job searching, and then, there's special job websites. I don't want to just assume it's always Indeed or LinkedIn.com, but are there any special job sites specific to your industry that may not be commonly known?
Yeah, I think job wise, if I'm looking, I'm a LinkedIn like most people. I look at LinkedIn a lot if I'm in the market. My advice to people doing on that, don't be afraid to connect with people in your industry through LinkedIn and interview a lot. I guess now I'm getting right into my advice portion. Before I chose this role, I was interviewing a lot. I got offered a lot of jobs and I was constantly interviewing to stay sharp, but I was really, I guess, still looking for what I wanted to do next, right? I kind of got that mentality. What's next? What's next? What's next? So I highly recommend that. And then really this job just kind of came out of a relationship that I had made. So it's really about relationships and knowing the right folks and, and it's not even knowing the right folks. That's the wrong way of doing it. Just working with people and getting some credibility with them and understanding when you're looking, they're willing to, might have a role for you kind of thing. And just be tenacious about it, really. A lot of ways I messaged people when I was really starting to look and said, do you know of anything open? And that's how it came about. And yeah, keep interviewing. That's my advice. I mean, even if you're totally content, yes. But I think there's advantages to interviewing. I think there's advantages to understanding what's out there. I think it's good to understand what the going salaries are. I think there's advantages to keeping good at interview questions, keeping your resume up to date. But yes, if you are totally stoked on what you're doing, then absolutely stick with it. And then my major advice, kind of I spoke to in my history, is you don't need to know what you need to do at 20 or a young age. I mean, let's be honest, I'm 45 now and I didn't figure it out until 35. And I'm sure there's people that were later. And I mean, I just started to figure out at 35. So I would say at 40, I really was like, okay, now this is where I want to go. So I'm a late bloomer. I'm sure my retirement's not as good as other people, but who cares? I had a lot of fun when I was young too. So yeah, that's my advice. Just kind of stay after what you want to do and try to keep the work-life balance as even as possible, and don't stress it. It's going to come. If you have good work ethic and you have drive, you're going to find where you got to go.
It sounds like you're pretty happy with the way things turned out. So this next question may or may not apply, but is there anything you would have done different?
Yeah, I'm sure. I say, yeah. I wish I knew what I wanted to do when I was 20. I know I can't. There's no regrets. I had a great time when I was younger. It took a while to come around to it. No, it's funny. But like at the end of the day, if I could change things, I think I would have just like found engineering faster. I really enjoyed engineering. I was a math and science kind of STEM guy, and this would be one regret. I wish I just jumped into that and grabbed onto it earlier. I think I just danced around it for a long time. And it's funny now because we just did this whole thing talking about how now it's more business. Now I'm more business, but I would never be in this more business aspect if I didn't get into engineering and the math of that and finding my way where I am today. So, but yeah, again, it's the no regrets, but could have things. Maybe if I gotten a little ahead of it, I would have been in a better spot. But things are good. I can't complain. That was a really good conversation, and I'm glad that you gave me the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm going to end it with that's a wrap. If you like what you hear and want to take the next steps in exploring your career after listening to an episode, go to JobGuppy.com to see a summary and helpful links to things mentioned during the interview, like industry-specific forums or websites, example job searches, career ladders, and degree programs or trade school recommendations. The hope is you now have more information than you did before from the guest on the podcast to help you move forward with the next steps on your career exploration journey. Tune in each week as JobGuppy continues to explore a million jobs in the sea.